Yeah, there you are. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you, sir.
You good. All right. So thank you all for coming in here to the big chamber for the executive committee meeting. These are obviously more informal, and I'm not sure. It looks like we have pretty much of a quorum. I think we've got almost everybody here. So welcome. Just a couple things before we start. I think it's my understanding there's a women's caucus meeting at 6. Is that right? So we need to kind of plow through this. Are you all supposed to be in here after this, or do you know? Back in another room? Okay. All right. So we'll try to get through some of it. And then we're going to try to have more of these meetings because we're not going to be able to get through and make final decisions on some of this stuff tonight. But I did want to get everybody back together and kind of talk through a couple things. So the first main item on here is, I think it's replacing the clerk. It says clerk research, but it's what we're doing in terms of trying to replace the clerk. I will tell you that the clerk is officially appointed by the mayor. The clerk is not appointed by the council. It's a mayor's pick. I think sometimes we are allowed to have a say in just reviewing the applications. It's my understanding that we have over 90 applications in. I think it's been posted, and the posting is now closed at this point. So we've got over 90 applications that have to be reviewed. At some point, I assume that they'll whittle those down, and then they'll make a selection from a few. Right now, we're fine. Austin Kyle from the council office obviously knows how to run these things, and so he's the interim clerk, and he'll stay in that position until we figure out where we're going, what we're doing. Anything else that I missed on that one?
No,
Margaret?
everything's with the with HR right now.
Okay.
So they're reviewing it.
Any questions from anybody? We just want to make sure everybody kind of knew where we were on that. Yeah, Aaron.
I was just curious, will we get to, will that person come before us at all before they're appointed, or will they just be appointed and then?
There's
we're
a
done?
confirmation. The council will confirm.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else on the clerk? The next item is council office staffing. So I don't think there's anything specific today. We knew as we were talking about this before that with the selection of Ms. Darby as our council director and the legal counsel for the Metro Council, that she would want to get into that role and try to figure out kind of what the needs are. And I believe that she is going to be, if she hasn't already, be visiting with you all individually and talking about what those needs are. And the only person I would suggest you don't meet with is Councilmember Hager. So he's over there. That'll be like 30 minutes of wasted time, so I wouldn't do that.
I doubt it. It's never wasted.
Somebody made a point of order? Is that Councilmember Lee? It probably is. I'm making, as I normally do, I make fun of Councilmember Hager, and he gets me back at some point. No, I appreciate you reaching out to everybody and trying to figure out kind of what the needs are. And anything else to report on that? We know we have, how many positions do we actually have open right now?
Technically, there are 4 open positions right now. That includes Austin Kyle's position, and it's my hope, fingers crossed, that that's a temporary opening and that he'll be back down in our office because he's a very valuable employee. And then we have 2 ASO2 positions and 1 ASO3 position, and that stands for Administrative Officer 3 position.
So Margaret will talk to all of you, make it clear what, some of you, this is your second term or third term, or some of you are first termers, and tell her what you think we need, and then we'll see if we can figure out how to make all that work, okay? Any questions about that part? Okay, the translation services has been pending for a little while. We've had different ideas back and forth. I believe Mel Fowler-Green is here to talk about that. Let me see, there's Hannah. Hannah, do we, Do we need any comments before we turn it over to Mel?
Well, I'll make one
Okay.
comment, if you don't mind. I think, Rosie, did you hand out the document? Oh, Rosie's got a document to hand out to everybody, so you can review through that while you're listening to Mel Fowler-Green.
So, and Mel has just recently stepped down from her position, and some council members didn't know that.
You know, I thought I sent an email out,
Okay.
and if my email is still live, my .gov email is still live, with an auto reply. If you want my private email address to stay in touch, that would be great.
Okay. Anything else before we turn it over to Mel?
No, I guess we'll talk about the document that's being handed out that just has some of the options and recommendations.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I'm here because I served as the director of the Metro Human Relations Commission for the past 7 years and was the Title VI officer for Metro. Traditionally, the director of the MHRC is the Title VI officer. And so we've been working on issues related to language access for a number of years. And I just want to give a little context and to be able to hopefully answer some questions that you might have about translation and interpretation services. And I am doing this on my own time, but in large part because I didn't want institutional knowledge to be lost. And I would venture to say there's probably very few other people in Metro who could answer as many questions about interpretation and language services as I might be able to right now. So just some legal context. When I think about language access, right, we think about linguistic minorities, generally speaking, right? So people who are LEP, limited English proficient, or who are deaf or hard of hearing. Title II of the ADA requires state and local governments to take steps to ensure that communications with people who have disabilities are as effective as communications with others. And I'm going to just set that aside, and I'm going to concentrate more on Section 601 of the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And Title VI provides that no person shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So any activity or program that Metro is supported in any way by federal financial assistance has an obligation under Title VI. And the Supreme Court held in 1974 that Title VI requires that LEP individuals be provided meaningful access, and that denial of that meaningful access, including language access services, does constitute discrimination on the basis of national origin. So, like, what is meaningful access, right? Like, that's kind of that's the crux of the matter. And there's a 4-point or 4-part analysis that's done to determine, when are we required to provide language access services? And it's really fact dependent. It starts with sort of an individualized assessment. The number or proportion of the LEP persons that are eligible to be served or that are likely to be encountered by the program or by the service. And then number 2, the frequency with which LEP individuals come into contact with the program or service. Then the nature and the importance of the program or the service, for that LEP individual. and then the resources that are available to the grantee or the recipient of that federal financial assistance, and the costs of those interpretation or translation services. So there's no one answer that will fit for all Metro departments, including if we think about your body as an independent department, so to speak. The four-factor analysis is also used in determining whether the specific documents have to be translated, or even portions of particular documents. What we recommend is that annually departments do an assessment of their documents to determine, what is called a vital document for the service or program that you're providing. And so vital means, how important is that document to obtaining the services or participating in the program, and what are the consequences for the LEP constituent who can't, if they can't obtain the information being provided in the document. Perfect examples of vital documents are grievance documents, right? If you want to file a grievance for a violation of Title VI, being able to obtain the information on that grievance would be vital. If there is any due process provided to the constituent, right? If, for example, if somebody lives in an MDHA property and the document is telling them that their housing is at risk and there's a hearing, let's say, or they need to provide information to maintain that housing. Like that's a vital document, right? The importance of that information and the consequences to the constituent. So, if you determine that an interpreter or a translation, and let's be clear, interpretation, right, is oral interpretation. Translation refers to the written. If you do determine that interpretation or translation is required in any particular circumstance, or even just desired, there are several ways that can be done. That can be accomplished through a bilingual staff person, assuming that they are in fact qualified or competent to provide translation or interpretation service. And with regard to interpretation, there are several ways to get that oral interpretation over the phone or in person, and are you seeking consecutive or simultaneous interpretation? So almost all of the interpretation that happens in the regular course of business is consecutive interpretation, right? So, person A says what they gotta say, everybody stops, the interpreter then interprets that, and it's a back and forth. Simultaneous interpretation, you kind of think about, like at the UN, right, where people have their headphones on, and a simultaneous interpretation will be the interpretation that's happening in real time, and there is no stop. So Metro has several Metro-wide contracts with language access vendors. The Metro Human Relations Commission office is the anchor department for those contracts. And the contracts the vendors that we have currently provide over the phone interpretation, or OPI, in-person interpretation, written translation, and several of them also provide a Metro employee competency assessment for a relatively small fee. So if you have a bilingual staff member that you want to use for interpretation, you can have one of the vendors do an assessment. So you can rest assured that that staff person is competent to provide interpretation. I will say none of the contracts contemplate or have negotiated prices for simultaneous interpretation. And if you've ever been in a place or experienced simultaneous interpretation, I can tell you actually from my pre-Metro life, I represented migrant workers and victims of labor trafficking in federal courts all over the South, and had some experience with simultaneous interpretation in federal courts. It's expensive. Simultaneous interpretation is a very particular and unique skill. And the competency to provide simultaneous interpretation is much higher than for this sort of garden variety consecutive interpretation. And depending on the length of a meeting in which there is simultaneous interpretation, that can't be done by a single interpreter. I mean, it is exhausting, right? The sort of mental capacity that it takes to be listening to what somebody is saying while you're saying it in, the desired language. It is really exhausting, and most places will require at least 2 interpreters for any meeting of any length. Usually people can do that for about 20 minutes at a time. And then they sort of tag team so they can get a rest. Some of the information that I provided and a lot more information can be found in a recent language access guide that the Metro Human Relations Commission published to help departments in setting up their own language access plans, which are recommended for all departments in Metro, and from my view, required for the departments who receive any form of federal financial assistance. And I can't let go of the opportunity to tell you that, we don't have a Metro-wide language access plan. And that's something that you all could think about. Many cities implement, sort of local government-wide language access plans through their city councils, right, through ordinances. I'm happy to point you in the direction of some that I thought were workable. And I know that it's something that the mayor's office, I've had conversations with them, and they're committed to pursuing or supporting a Metro-wide language access plan. And then the last thing I want to say, I forgot to say about simultaneous interpretation, one of the more interesting new things in simultaneous interpretation is something we're all experiencing, doing things virtually. So there are now some remote simultaneous interpreting platforms, and a few of them, from my understanding, can be integrated into WebEx or other virtual platforms. And I can't speak to pricing on those, but there are at least 6 new remote platforms that I know of. I'm happy to answer questions and tell you how you access the vendors.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about what the current budget is, what we're spending today on translation stuff? And I guess we can go from here to what it would cost if we try to be more deliberate about having it at every council meeting. But what are we spending today? Do we know?
Well, that's a little difficult, and I think that now is kind of the perfect time for the Metro Human Relations Commission office to do sort of an audit of the vendors, because what happens is, you know, each department has to have its own like registration with the vendor, and they then obtain the services from the vendor and then pay for they're individually invoiced for those services. So we do not have sort of a pot of money that is used for language access services. Each department has to budget what they deem necessary. And quite honestly, back in 2016, we did the first and only, as far as I know, Metro-wide language access study and report. And at that time, we couldn't even obtain clear information on how much money Metro departments as a whole had spent on language access services, but there were a surprising number of departments who did not budget anything for language access services. And I think that that's improved since 2016, but I think we do have a way to go. And of course, some departments spend considerably more, particularly if, you know, the services that they're providing are critical services like public health and, you know, first responders.
Councilmember Hancock?
Thank you very much for bringing this information to us. I remember at the last executive committee meeting where we discussed this, it was brought up that there were these, you know, magical, for lack of a better term, headphones that you could just put on in meetings and then hear everything in the language of your choice. And I appreciate your conversation about the simultaneous interpretation and the expertise that it requires. I know when I was working as a foreign service officer in the EU, when we had conferences with multiple languages, we would have, you know, 10 or 12 different cubbies, if you will, set up for those interpreters. And like you said, they always had to have breaks. I also want to emphasize the fact that when you do simultaneous interpretation, while it is a lot more expensive and an expertise skill, that's the time we're looking at now. And when you do translation, you're looking at, or the interpretation that's not simultaneous, excuse me, you're looking at doubling or tripling or quadrupling your time, because when we say something, then it needs to be translated to the other party. Then when they respond, then it needs to be translated back to us. So you're looking at, you know, a 45-minute zoning bill turning into, you know, an hour and a half or 2 hours. And maybe that's fine, but we need to keep in mind that if we have an 8-hour meeting, you know, we could easily make it 16 or 20 hours.
Yeah, I think that's right. You can spend time or money. What do you want to spend? Yeah.
I don't want to spend the time. If we could make the meeting shorter, I would prefer that. Councilmember Hancock, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Other questions from folks? So Mel, I've got a couple of questions, and I don't know, we were just asking. I mean, the most important document that comes out of this body and the mayor's office, really for the city, is the budget document. Is it translated that you know of?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. So that's one thing we ought to be taking a look at is, you know, when you talk about vital documents, that is one of the most vital documents that we do each year. The second thing, you talked about a citywide access plan, and other cities have that. And it sounds like we've kind of looked at it, but have we really gotten that far on looking at that, a citywide access plan? In terms of everything that we do, in terms of how the departments deal with it and how we deal with it?
No, and we haven't gotten very far down that road. And,
Okay.
you know, I get to now sort of lay it out there.
Sure, that's fine.
you know, the expertise to really think about language access services Metro-wide, like where would that sit in Metro? And of course, my argument is it makes perfect sense that that be with the Metro Human Relations Commission staff. And this city has starved the Metro Human Relations Commission to the point that there is no way that we could have provided any kind of robust service to other departments to build, assess, provide technical assistance on their language access.
And you're talking about because you never had the resources to do it?
No,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
You know, the Metro Human Relations Commission budget is, you know, less than $600,000, you know, and we got to pay rent even out of that, and IT services. We just didn't have the human power.
Right.
Now, I personally provided as much technical assistance to the departments that receive federal financial assistance in, you know, making sure that each year when they were responding to their grantors, that they could, at least with a straight face, say that we were complying with Title VI. But it gave me a great deal of heartburn every year.
Well, so, I mean, and please join in on the conversation. Obviously, this issue has arisen now within the council because there was an appropriation to take a look at this. City's growing, more diversity. It would seem to me, there's probably two parts of this now. One is, the reason it's on our agenda is because people would like to deal with it and try to come up with a plan. So one of the questions is, if we were to go back as a city body and look at our council documents and try to determine what's vital in terms of trying to get them translated, but then also we have, I mean, this group has obviously numerous meetings, not only full council meetings, but committees. There's a women's caucus meeting. There are different caucuses within this body. There are, Councilmember Allen is having Budget 101 discussions. It's almost as if we need some help for somebody to come in and just sit down with some of us, maybe the executive committee, and say, what do you all do? And then go, you can't cover all of it, but which ones are the things that really do need translation services, because they are important. And that would go with the budget as well. But I would assume, you never want to assume anything, but we need help if this is what this body wants to do with a plan. But I would think there are probably members in here that think that we probably should have a citywide access plan as well. And maybe that's something that we all ought to be working with everybody and come up with the resources to make that happen.
Well, and I think definitely one benefit to having a clearer language access plan across departments is the protection of that federal financial assistance that we're getting.
Yeah.
Right? Because at least for those departments, annually answering to the state and to the federal government. And, this is the Department of Justice, Department of Transportation, right? All the ways in which we're bringing in federal and state money. We have to answer every year, like, do you comply with Title VI? Do you have a language access plan? Attach it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think that not only is it the right thing to do, I think that it's, the morally and ethically right thing to do. I think it's financially the right thing to do as well, at least, with regard to risk mitigation in protecting what's nearly $400 million that comes into Metro.
Sure. Councilmember Allen?
I remember one of the reports that Hannah gave included information that if things are recorded, that there then is a way on YouTube to pick your language and it will translate it after the fact, or something like that. Am I remember that, Hannah? And that's a service that would have a significantly lower cost. So could a plan include deciding between which things need to be translated at the moment and which things just need to be put on YouTube so that they can be translated at the leisure of someone who speaks a different language and would like to know what happened but doesn't necessarily have to participate in real time? Is that, could that be part of the plan?
I absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know how good that service is. I know that, and I've actually never tried it. We've relied in some of our work at the commission on the closed captioning that would happen, in order to include the deaf and hard of hearing communities.
And I think this would be closed caption as opposed to a voice saying it, but it would be spelled out in whatever language you say you need it spelled out in.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Ms. Fowler Green, can you share, I know like when you see a planning commission agenda or, there's standard verbiage at the bottom if you need access services. I admittedly have always just interpreted that to be like physical access, like I need help, maybe with hearing or is there then a way kind of metro-wide? So if, to Council Lady Allen's point, I think through digital services after the fact, somebody wants to understand what transpired. But if somebody is needing to be an active participant, say there's a BZA hearing, planning commission, something is before us, with our advance notice, right, appropriately, we have agendas out there. I think it would be, worthwhile to know how, instead of making assumptions, right, if we offered services on an as-needed basis, then over time, I think we would see, okay, well, once a year, we had that hearing and we had somebody come and they did dual interpretation, and then how did that go? So can that standard verbiage with a metro-wide contract be more explicit or clear that language services could be provided and that somebody needs to contact whatever the related office is so that we can assure that they're there? I mean, that kind of seems like a good interim step for kind of in-person responding to somebody's need. I mean, is that being done by any department at this juncture? Is that inferred to or implied in that standard message? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So the standard message now really is speaking to requirements under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which has a higher legal standard and a higher bar for requirements on providing what's called effective communication. And the Title VI, when we talk about LEP constituents, right, the meaningful access is a slightly lower bar. But what you're suggesting, I think, is not necessarily just an interim solution. In fact, that's a solution that many cities are currently using as their language access plan, right? So, you have a vital document, you've determined it's a vital document, you have that translated, right? And that's made readily available. However, if you have a meeting or you want to participate in a meeting, that language appears alongside the ADA required language that, if you require language access, or interpretation services, that, you can request it within, 48 hours or, whatever would work. Yeah, that's what many cities are currently doing right now.
All right, I've got Councilmember Welsh. I'm going to come to you, then I'll go to Councilmember Hancock. Councilmember Welsh and I were just talking, and we're watching our time because we're going to run out. But I think this is important. And the council needs some help on this one. And it sounds like maybe the city may need some overall help on it too. Councilmember Welsh is chairman of the Human Services Committee. Would you all be willing to take this on and quickly and start working through this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Thank you for asking. We would love to take that on because this is really very important. And when Mel talks about vital documents, so many of the departments that my committee oversees, those vital documents are key to the functioning of that department and making sure we get those services to the people who need them across all language barriers. So yeah, we would, as a task for the committee, we would love to do that and come up with a plan.
Everybody okay with that, Councilmember Roden?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. I was just going to say, I'm at juvenile court and general sessions all the time, and there's people on staff. So I'm just wondering where, I'm sure there's money for other people in other departments in the, so it can't be that difficult, so.
I think this is one that needs to be looked at because I understand what you got. Councilmember Hancock?
Again, my only experience with this is with the federal government, and we would never have trusted YouTube's translation services to be a record of what our government is trying to communicate. So like in the courts where they required certified translators, that's what I would encourage us to do. Yes, free sounds great, but then that could put us at a liability.
Okay. I think, unless there's any other comments, because we got about 20 minutes left.
Well, I was just going to say,
okay.
I agree. I don't have much faith in the free interpretation or free translation services, but I do think in you remember the 4-factor test under Title VI we discussed? I do think that there may be times in which, interpretation services aren't necessarily required by law, but to provide better service to constituents, that may be a time in which free interpretation services would suffice. But that would have, you'd have to be intentional about when to use that and when you actually need a competent interpreter or a competent in translation.
Okay. Councilmember Allen?
Just very quickly, there are at least 140 different languages spoken in Nashville. So clearly we'll have to choose, Spanish and Kurdish and Arabic or whatever, but to reach people, to allow the possibility that other languages can be done, not necessarily paid for, certified, I think expands our opportunities as opposed to limiting that, for the truly important cases, we know we look at that test and that test also provides us some guidance on which languages we would certify.
That's right, and I think that, quite frankly, Spanish is the only one in Davidson County right now that I feel like, may rise to the level of, required interpretation and translation depending on how important the service or program is.
And just one other thing, the counties that surround Davidson County that don't have the need on a daily basis, like here in Davidson County, the AOC sends people out when they request them. So I'm sure there's a service here in Tennessee like the AOC or, something else that if someone knows they're going to need services, they can request them and have someone show up. I guess the question is paying for the services, so.
Well, and you think about, asking each department to assess their needs is important, but asking them to each individually provide budget for, let's say, bilingual staff, I think is a little much, right? I think it makes more sense that, we brought up the courts, right? The method of having maybe a sort of bank of staff members or Metro employees who provide language access services across departments would be more preferable.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. Thank you all for the good questions. I think you're probably going to hear from Councilmember Welsh, and You're not going to get away
She's
from...
my council member, by the way.
Okay, well, you're not going to get away from her. You're not going to get away from the council
She's
yet.
also
Fran.
my friend, so.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mel. Thank you
you.
for being here. Okay, so I'm watching carefully, and I'd ask Councilmember Syracuse to come and talk a little bit about strategic planning. He's been working on this for the last 35 years. And no, he's been working on this for like the last year and a half. And the strategic plan is talking about kind of how this whole thing fits upstairs on the second floor. So it's not, you know, it's not council related in the sense of something internally. It's more about strategic planning on what's happening up here. So I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Syracuse.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I will try to be brief. Okay, so there's two fundamental components to this. One is from a council HR perspective. The other is from a physical nature of the second floor. Again, I know I've apologized before. I apologize for the delay in implementing this. I wanted Margaret to make sure that she got settled in her seat and had buy-in for this whole project that we're doing and to get her input. One of the major components from the HR perspective is, as I think I mentioned last time, we did get a good amount of data from HR, who did a survey of all like-sized legislative bodies across the U.S. To try to compare us as far as how many staff members do they have and different components like that, so that we can then send out a survey of all council members here to take a better temperature of how they engage with staff. What services do you need? Are you aware of these services? Are you not aware of these kinds of services? So that we ultimately can kind of get on the same page about what's available, what we want, what we need, and then we can take that with the data that HR gave us and try to make some more informed and intentional decisions about how we support ourselves as a department. So that is finally coming. The hot potato on this one is on me as of like a day ago or so. Margaret did give me some input on the survey. So that needs to go out soon. And then, throughout this whole process, I've had good conversations with Shannon Hall. She is ready to help us out in this process. Councilmember Evans, Stiles, Hauser, and Allen have helped to put together a template of sorts about a onboarding program that HR has also said that they would help us with to be more robust and more consistent from year to year to year about what it means to train and help onboard council members. Some are stronger in other areas than others. So anyway, that is coming. Then the other piece to this is the second floor. Been working hard with Rosie and General Services and whatnot about, obviously we all know we have a ton of space on that side of the floor, especially on the first and third Tuesdays every night, and not enough space on this side of the floor. And especially as we've discussed over the years that we need a little bit more robust committee meetings, how they function or whatnot. The facilities just are lackluster and to say the least. So the plan that is proposed that is so far just about there is looking to ultimately move the clerk staff to the other side of the floor. That has been redone. There is just enough, I think, room for everybody, and that gives us the ability to have much larger committee rooms over here. Much more open, much more transparent, much more tech-oriented. If those remember in the previous term, then Vice Mayor Briley is the one who got us finally cameras so that we could actually, record committee meetings. So that is coming. When we opened up the CIB last October, I did go ahead and put in a CIB line item for this project, and I've been keeping the administration in the loop on all this, because ultimately, whenever, Vice Mayor, you think that it's necessary, that when it's the right time to ask for the funds, that we will hopefully get support for that. The mayor actually made one suggestion that I thought was fascinating, and that we are waiting on General Services to see if it's possible. There I didn't touch this room. I was just looking at really the rest of the other rooms. But from the mayor's perspective of sitting in the front row right there and always having your back to our constituents and the rest of his colleagues, had the thought, is there anything else that we could do that is more that makes more sense for this room? And so General Services is looking at what we could possibly do that we're not always having our backs to our constituents, or especially the first two rows, let's say, back to everybody else. Is there another way to do it? What was the cost? Is it worth it? That kind of thing. So we're General Services is looking into if that would be a possibility or not. If not, then we just go forward with the rest of the plan. But there is a CIB in there. I'm hoping that General Services completes their part of the proposal of this, and then we can look at the numbers, see if it's worthy, and ultimately that's my report. Thank you.
No, that's great. Questions? Councilmember Roden?
I remember the mayor talking about us being in semicircles back, but as more I think about it, I think like the House of Commons would be great, with us all looking at each other, yelling across the way, and we would put you in the middle, Mr. Vice Mayor, and I think that would make council much more, people would watch. I'm just saying, people would watch.
That would make it much more dangerous for me. Councilmember Roden, would you require us to wear wigs?
That would be entertaining.
Yeah.
What color would you prefer?
Oh, I like the traditional white because my hair is getting gray pretty quickly. It might be fun to have at least one meeting just like that, and then people would quickly go, I think we need to go back to the original format. But good idea. We'll keep that. We'll write that down. Questions for Councilmember Syracuse? Yeah, Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And Councilmember Syracuse, we've got a question and then just a quick comment. Is the idea of moving the clerk across the hall, would the council staff be coming to this side, or would the council staff and the clerk be on that side together?
Then Clerk Elizabeth Waits, worked with Rosie and General Services and all that, and they put a plan together that would move the clerk to the other side of the floor so that we would have enough room to open up to large committee rooms, larger, and be much more effective and having room for people like our guests or whatnot that are coming to a certain committee actually has room to be there instead of just like sometimes even just peering into a room so they could kind of hear what's going on.
Well, and thank you. Yes, that's the answer I was hoping for. One bit of functionality that I would love to see preserved. I don't utilize it very often, but there are times where maybe a very neutral meeting space is good to get some parties together, and the council office, utilizing that as a meeting space has been really, really useful in a way that, a lot of other spaces just wouldn't be for some conversations to happen. So, that could be the committee rooms. I would love for us to still have some, place where we can easily call up a staff, call up the council staff and say, I've got 12 people that I need to get in a room and talk. So just keeping that functionality, preserving it in some respect would be something I would definitely like to see. Thank y'all.
Councilmember Syracuse?
Absolutely. The committee rooms are designed to be kind of multifunctional. Even other areas, judicial upstairs or whatnot, might be able to use them as well. So,
great. And if we could, well, that's we'll talk details another time. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Hancock?
In agreement with Councilman Parker, I like the way that we can use Outlook to book those 2 conference rooms without having to bother any individuals, and that would be cool if we could do the same thing with rooms like these.
I think you're all on the right track. I mean, Councilmember Syracuse is right. You have these meetings over here, and there's a big issue, and it's hard enough to get all the council members in, and then everybody's trying to listen in through the door, and that really doesn't provide much for good public input or just for people listening, and the rooms just were never designed to be that large. And so we are cognizant of the fact that if there's something big going on, there's going to be a crowd, you have to come in here. You just can't use those rooms. So any other feedback, or if you have feedback, tell Councilmember Syracuse, because he's working on this. It's a good thing. Okay? Yeah, Councilmember Rutherford? Hold on.
Thank
Okay.
you, Vice Mayor. Just as a way to, I guess, put an end to this particular topic, as a member that sits on the back row and immediately in front of the guest podium, I highly endorse the idea of a redesign of the chamber. Thank you.
Can we make that microphone louder back there so that it just blares right into his ear? All right, Councilmember Syracuse, thanks for the information. All right, so we got about 8 or 9 minutes left. I'm going to turn it over to Ginger Hauser and Theo Morrison, who's going to kind of explain what's going on through our, with the folks that help us lobby up on Capitol Hill, and kind of the process and maybe some of the latest information, because the state legislature is already back in session.
Great. So I know you all have another committee, especially the ladies, in just a few minutes. So we'll try to sort of speed talk like an auctioneer. I'd like to introduce you to Theo Morrison. I will allow him to give a little bit of introduction for those of you who don't know him. He is a member of the contract lobbying team, and I have asked him, because of his knowledge of the council in Nashville, he is going to work with me and really keep you updated as we go along legislative session. So let me let Theo introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. We won't keep you long. I am Theo Morrison. Very happy to be here. It's really been a dream of mine to serve in this capacity as your representative. I am a Nashville native. Grew up in a part of town that is now referred to as 12th South. If anyone asks you where you were from back in the day, you would just say, I'm from out south. Now it's 12th South. But I am a native, very happy to represent you. I've worked on the Hill since 1992, working on state legislative issues. I've also worked within the Metro Council as well. Also had an opportunity to work with the Nashville Soccer Club to help them get their project up and going here in Nashville. So, thank you.
So Theo will be helping me. The weekly reports that we're giving to you is sort of a joint effort. And then when we've talked to the vice mayor, when it makes sense during session is to come to this executive committee meeting to give you an update, but also an opportunity, maybe not today because of time, but to answer questions that you may have. Because what I heard in talking to you is that what you were getting from the previous contract entity was just a lot of information and not a lot of context. So if you note, what we've been sending you is shorter, right? It's not all the hundreds of bills that are filed. It's what are we looking at right now? And to that end, you know, if you've at all turned on the television or watched the news, you know that redistricting is just about done. The House did last night make a few changes to some of our House districts in Nashville so that incumbents are not pitted against one another for those that are running again. There are no maps, I don't believe as of right now, that have street names on them, just lots of census tracts, so it's a little complicated. But that is, I view, a positive move for some of our folks who previously, Bo Mitchell and Vincent Dixie, were going to have to be pitted against one another. Mike Stewart and John Ray Clemens were going to be pitted against each other. My understanding is the House version now, that is not the case. It will go back to the Senate this week. We anticipate that will be adopted. The congressional district stays at the dividing into 3 congressional districts. You saw the news today that Congressman Jim Cooper has decided not to run again. So things are changing. In the weeks ahead, we'll get more detailed maps that actually have street names on it so you can actually tell where you live, which is, and who will represent you, which is a little tricky right now if you look at them. The only real sort of opportunity now to make any difference is in the courts. It's just where we sit in a supermajority. There is a piece of legislation related to vouchers. They use the term education savings accounts that it has been filed by Senator Mike Bell. It has moved out of one committee. We are watching it. We go back to court next month on the current lawsuit as it relates to Memphis and Nashville having vouchers. We, in talking to Metro Legal, still think we've got a pretty good shot. There could be some hijinks of, is there going to be an amendment, and could that try to affect the lawsuit? I think there might be some attempts to do that, and talking to folks, the sense that I'm hearing is, in the House anyway, it probably doesn't have much of a shot. So I think, to be honest with you, we're going to fight this out in court, and we're going to find out whether we're going to have vouchers in Nashville in the courts. But we will keep you updated if sort of the winds change in the legislature on that. The big sort of behemoth issue this session is a new funding formula for K-12 funding. That will be the biggest item that's going to be addressed next Monday night when if you decide to tune in to the governor's State of the State. Listen to what he says about that. What we're going to be listening for is how much new money are they going to put in. We know that you all pay a higher proportion of our school's cost than pretty much any other school system in the state. And you've raised taxes when you needed to do that. We're in a lawsuit, as you know, with Memphis and small schools around that inequity of funding. So how much more new money they put in is really the big deal. And is it going to be recurring? And is it going to be recurring ongoing, not just a year or two, but in those recession years, are we going to get more money? So some groups like Tennessee SCORE have come out and said $1 billion new recurring needs to be put in. My understanding is TEA has asked for 1.25 more billion. In my conversations with Metro Nashville Public Schools and their negotiations, it's like, what does that mean to Nashville, right? So really, for us to be more prepared from a state investment standpoint, we're really looking at 100 to 250 million recurring is really what we need. Do we anticipate that that's what will be announced on Monday night? Probably not. But there's a lot of discussion around the devil's in the details about how much will rural kids get as a bonus, how much will English language learners as a bonus, how much will poverty be a bonus in the formula, how do you determine what poverty is? But to me, you got to know the bottom line number to know how well we're going to do. And I think we'll start knowing what that is on Monday night, and then when we see the details, we'll know more. We are working with Metro Schools, we are working with TEA, we are working with SCORE. I've even talked to the Charter School Association because they're concerned about equity in funding. So we are looking for friends and allies anywhere we can find them, and more to come. And if it's not adequate, we'll probably be back in court in October.
Yeah, I think Ginger and the team has done an excellent job of building coalitions, and a lot of what we do is built on information. And so we've been able to obtain a lot of great information, working with those different groups, but also as we're talking to legislators. And right now, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. I'm not getting a lot of warm and fuzzy around a particular plan because that plan has not really been divulged. There's been a framework that's been released, but still, when you're looking at when that framework was, which it was released just a week or two ago, we're talking about having the State of the State address, introducing a bill, and then trying to get that bill passed before the end of April, which is kind of their plan is to be out and to be back out on the campaign trail. So I think it's very difficult for legislators to wrap their arms around something that they haven't seen and they don't know the plan. So that I think that's been somewhat advantageous for us in terms of trying to forestall any attempt to just try to ramrod anything on us. So.
And we'll see if it happens this year. Some legislators have said there's just not enough time. So We'll just see. Something I know you care about is the authority to regulate entertainment transportation vehicles. You've passed a framework of regulation. The bill that is sponsored by the Statewide Hospitality Association, the Convention Visitors Bureau, your Nashville Chamber, the Greater Nashville Hospitality Association passed out of its first hurdle in the House Transportation Committee today. We, along with the other big four cities, are supporting this. We're also sort of communicating with places like Gatlinburg that we think are ripe to be overrun with these as well. We had some good committee comments today with some Republican members in surrounding counties that supported the legislation. So we are being supportive. It is, if anybody asks you, it is a statewide bill. That is a very important thing to sort of note. This is not just about Nashville. This is to make sure that UT football games aren't disturbed by having all of these vehicles, or your family trip to Gatlinburg. So if anybody asks you, it is a statewide bill, and that is really a preventative measure so that basically those local governments don't have to do what you've done, which is let it happen and then try to figure out how to get your arms around it after. So that's good news that it's moving. We will keep abreast and keep you abreast of that as well. It hasn't moved in the Senate yet, but we anticipate it will in the next couple weeks. Speaking of soccer, Theo mentioned soccer a little earlier. There's a piece of legislation to allow alcohol sales at the soccer stadium. It passed out of its first hurdle today, and Ryan Williams out of Cookeville is the sponsor and a big soccer fan, and did a great job. He sounded like a Nashvilleian getting it out of committee today.
He's a big fan. He is a season ticket holder. He actually played in college. So he has a son who plays, and so he's a big supporter.
So I think that's good news for soccer, and it is moving. There are some bills around notice. You have to provide notice before meetings. This is really directed for rural areas, but it may be relevant for you in some occasions. If, let's say, you're having a special called meeting, you've got notice requirements that I'm sure Margaret is keeping track of. If there is not enough time to get something to the newspaper and printed, this will allow in those kind of circumstances, if you put it on a website and give all the details, that it might meet some of those notice requirements. So that could be advantageous with special called meetings and things like that. We'll be watching that bill and think it might give you some options that you currently don't have. I don't want to get too much into, oh yes. The chamber is going to have a bill drop that has not dropped yet, but it will, that deals with how many votes it takes, or how many signatures on a petition it takes to go to referendum. So obviously the last couple of years we've been hijacked a little bit around those kind of issues. Everywhere else in the state, it is a higher threshold of signatures to be able to have a referendum. The chamber has taken this on because they view it as an economic development issue if a group can sort of hijack our local government. And they are going to be filing a bill that basically puts us at the same place as everywhere else in the state. So that is coming. We've just reviewed the language. We are letting the chamber sort of lead that effort. So more to come on that. So thanks, Theo, for bringing that to my attention.
And that creates, again, we're not trying to make this a
Theo,
national issue.
if you don't mind, move there
sorry.
you go. Thank you.
Sorry about that. And again, we're trying not to make this a Nashville issue. I mean, it is. It's relative to Nashville, but we're simply making it so that it's equitable across the state, so that we're on the same level, same for that threshold that has to be met.
I think the other thing I want to bring to your attention, and I know Councilmember Parker, I think, has already seen this, is it relates to a portion, and Margaret's going to help me on this, a portion, I believe it's 50 cents on the hotel occupancy tax that would be required to go to basically an RFP'd entity for promotion of tourism, i.e. Convention Visitors Corp. They drafted a piece of legislation. We saw it. We had concerns about the fact that it said you couldn't use those funds for debt service, and thought that that may, in fact, impact the Speedway deal. They are going to amend that bill. We're still in some conversations to understand sort of the history and the amount of revenue that we get right now. And where did this come from? And we'll get back to you a little bit more. I know that you expressed some real interest in that bill as well. They are willing to amend it so that they don't tie our hands and potentially jeopardize some things that we already have in the works. We also know how important it is for us to get along with our friends. So we're having conversations right now about this bill and the implications for us. And Margaret, I know you've just begun to sort of look at some of this legislation, but have a big history really in looking at the fiscal sort of issues as it relates to tax collections. And I don't know if you want to say anything at this point, or maybe later we can bring more to the...
I've had some questions about the revenues and the uses of the funds that have come in currently,
So I think more conversations are going to happen with our friends at the Convention Visitors Corp in the days ahead. So there's more going on. I think those are sort of the big things right now. And I know for the Ladies Caucus, we've put you about 6-7 minutes over, so I apologize. Yes.
Okay, real quick, Councilmember Hancock, you might want to grab the microphone. I turned it on.
Thank you very much. You mentioned the redistricting modifications and that State Representative Clemens, District 55, would no longer cross over with, but I did not think you mentioned State Representative Freeman, which is District 56, and I think there were 3 of them that were zoned into one, so I'm just wondering if they got them all out.
I think the original version put him with Jason Potts, who's not running again, right, and Clemens and Stewart. It kind of took Stewart's house in East and John Ray Clemens and Belmont Hillsborough and sort of put them over in areas that are not where they live. So I think what they've done is they've separated them. John Clemens said he no longer has Hillsborough West End. So I think we're Bob Freeman now. But I think the important thing about it is they were talking to leadership and I think got a little movement to not have incumbent and against incumbent anymore. And I think they view that as some ability to have some compromise and partnership with the legislature. So it still splits up districts, I'm told. But to really know the impact, you have to get into those street maps that we don't have yet.
Thank you very much.
That's fair to say. Yeah.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. I just wanted to know if there's a piece of legislation that we would like to add to your list that you're tracking. Can we just email you?
Okay. Absolutely, absolutely. And what we've got the team doing right now is basically scanning everything. It's going to take some time to do that. Plus, we have all the list of bills that we were following last year, too. So, yes, just send it to us. It may be that we're already tracking it, but if you may find something. Theo did today. He found something that we hadn't seen yet. So, yeah, just send it our way, and we'll start tracking it.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I'm reading everything that's being filed, and just so you know, the bill filing deadline for the House is February 2nd, and the Senate deadline is February 3rd.
All right, anything else from any members?
Oh, okay, good.
Okay. Anything else? We're good?
The only thing I was going to say is just know we're trying to take a real collaborative approach, knowing our sort of dynamic on the Hill. Is weekly, I'm meeting with Tennessee Municipal League and the big 4 cities. I'm also meeting with County Services Association, so sort of our counterparts in the county, so that we can align on issues that make sense for us. The Middle Tennessee Mayor's Caucus have gone together to meet with the governor, to meet with legislative leaders. Tennessee Municipal League is going to take the big 4 in a couple weeks to also meet with the governor and some chairmen. So just know we are kind of working on that because we know that our unique situation is it's very difficult for us to go solo up the Hill, but sometimes our friends, just like in this body, you can have a collection of partners on a piece of legislation and a collection of completely different partners on something else, and that's really the strategy that we're taking right now.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay, so we're about 15 minutes over time. I know Women's Caucus is going to meet. So we'll adjourn this meeting for tonight. We appreciate you all being here, Mr. Morrison, Ms. Hauser. if you have things, we'll call a meeting probably for next month as well. We'll keep doing this because we can keep talking about some of these issues. If there are other things you want to add to the list, either talk to me or talk to Margaret Darby. And with that, we stand adjourned, with the exception of Councilmember Lee. Could you come up here for just a minute? Okay. Thanks, everybody.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.